all our panelists are here, and as is customary, we're just going to wait for maybe like 3 minutes or thereabouts for our attendees to sign on. So Albert is here as well. Great. This is going to be an interesting meet. So we're waiting for our attendees to join. I think a few have joined already. We just give them some time, and then we'll deep dive into today's session. Sean is here, and Sean will be co-hosting with me. I can see him online as well. So he'd be the second Kavik button. Okay, great. He's changed his name now. Fantastic. So, well, fine.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Adamma. Good morning, Nekesa.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're waiting for our participants to join in. And I think we just give them like 2-3 minutes or so, and then I can see a couple of people already joining. Albert is here, Chantal is here, Nogulu is here. And interestingly, from our previous sessions, we discovered that we have people signing in from like all across Africa, people from South Africa, Kenya, Malawi, Ghana, Nigeria, and a couple of other places. So I'm sure as you make your presentations, it will cascade to all those various places and the businesses there. And we're really looking forward to learning from you guys today. We want to use this opportunity to say a big thank you as well to AfriLabs for making this possible. I know when Nekesa was Director of Strategy, she pioneered a lot of this, and we're enjoying the fruits of that now, and it's so great to have her on the call with us as well. I think we have a couple of people already, so in order not to waste, although I think it's just 11:01, maybe we should get started. Sean, what do you think?
I agree with you. I'm just about to share the slide. Just give me a minute. Okay. All right. So,
Sean, I think your TV is on.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, everyone who's attending. We'll have quite a number of people here now. I guess we're just going to start straight away. And because we have two major panelists speaking today and teaching us today, we're going to take them in some kind of series. So Adamma is going to go first. She'll introduce herself, tell us a bit about herself, and then we'll deep dive into our session. And once she's done, Nekesa will speak next. She will respond. And then we'll have our usual question and answer sessions where we can engage with them. The rules still remain the same. If you have a question, please just type it in the chat box or in the question and answer box, and then we'll address it as we go on. All right, Sean, thanks.
All right. So I'm going to welcome Adamma to take our presentation. I'll be sharing the slide. And she's going to be talking about the legal issues in investment agreements. Adamma Isamade is a well-practiced, well-advanced legal practitioner, and she's also a very strong force in the Nigerian Bar Association. I know she's currently working directly with the president of the NBA Association. So she's someone that has a lot of experience directly with the top guys in the Nigerian Bar Association. So she'll be able to help us remove the mystical areas of the legal and the investment agreement. Adamma, welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Seun. Thank you for that introduction. So I guess that has been sorted. I don't need to say more about myself. So I have 15 minutes. So let's just dive into what we are doing today. So we are talking about investment agreements, and one thing we need to know, as usual, in any climate, anywhere, is the meaning of what we are talking about. Although we are going to deep dive into legal issues or pitfalls, do's and don'ts, whichever way we want to put it, to to know exactly what to do and what not to do. But we'll first of all start by defining what an investment agreement is. So basically, an investment agreement is a legal agreement between a company and an investor. Obviously, what it does is that it summarizes the terms and conditions of any investment, any investment that is to be made in a company, such as the money being invested, the ROI, the rights and duties of each party, the details on management, how the company is going to be managed when there's an investor in it, operation of business, the rights and privileges of the investor, the obligations of the company, and all that. So basically, it's a legal agreement that summarizes the relationship between the investor and the company. Next slide, please. And okay, while I'm waiting for the next slide, can the participants here and probably say something?
Hello, if you're a participant, just indicate in the chat box if you can hear Adamma, so we can clarify if her audio is great. So you could just type a hello or something, or I can hear you. So she knows that she's speaking to the entire room. Thank you.
I see someone say that chat is disabled, Philip. So they're currently messaging in the Q&A section.
Okay, I'm going to sort that out now. Seun, please, if you can. You're also logged out?
No. I'm trying to allow people to chat. Let me find out. I think it's the network. Can you guys hear me, or is my network out?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me. Okay, I think Ada is back. Ada, can you hear us? I think we lost you for a bit.
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Okay, so please come. Hello, what's happening?
We can hear you. Ada, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So next on the slide is the process of making an investment agreement. So the first on it is, how do you create the investment agreement? There's always, you go about the negotiations, the investor, the company, the representative of the company, most likely the CEO, and probably just start off, we negotiate what we want. What exactly do we want in this investment? What's our takeaway from the investment? Then you go to drafting. This is where the lawyers probably come in, or what the lawyers do here is that they, delineate everything that has been said in the negotiations. You know, all the parties will talk to their lawyers and tell them this is what we want, this is what we want, and the lawyers draft it. Now, after that drafting, you take it back to the people that are going to be the parties to the contract. So you take it back to them for review. They make sure that everything that has been said, everything they had agreed on is well represented in the contract. They read the fine print of the contract. And after that, you do the signing, of course, with witnesses, and then the execution. The execution is now, you know, taking it on. So what's the first thing that should happen when we sign the contract? The first thing probably is, okay, pay money, make your investments. Are you making your investment in a lump sum? Is it cash? Is it over a time period? Is it by milestones and all that? Please, next slide. Okay, so this is the crux of the matter. What to watch out for, what to do, what not to do. In an agreement, in an investment agreement. Now, I realize that many people because they hear an investor wants to put in money, they just go all haywire, and you know, they don't tend to sit down and read the agreement. And most of the times, the person that actually initiates the agreement is the investor. Now, that is the norm. And why this is so is because the investor is all about money. The investor is trying to make sure that he's covered in an agreement. He's also trying to make sure that he gets the best out of the money he has put in, trying to put 2 naira and get 10 naira. So, and for us, for startups and, you know, small companies, what they tend to do is like they get lost in the amount of money that comes in or that is being said that will come in. So they just, you know, sign everything, and like, oh, he's giving us money, she's giving us money, let's just sign and, you know, continue and all that. We'll work it out later. That's a very wrong move. As a startup, what you don't work out at the beginning, you will most likely not work it out later, and you will always bite you in the ass. Sorry, pardon my English or my French. So we're going to be looking at what to do and what not to do, and the pitfalls to avoid. The first is in the structure of the investment agreement. Now, as I said earlier, never just say because you're taking on an angel investor, then you must know what you're doing. You must know what you're doing. Basically, there are 2 types of investment structure in an investment agreement. You have the traditional equity investment. In that scenario, so the investor is investing, let's give an example of 100,000 naira, and the business has been valuated at, you know, 1 million, and he's taking 10% of the business. So that's just the normal. So he's taking a part of your shares for the investment he's about to make. And they look at it based on the valuation. So if you say the valuation of the company is, let's say, 10 million. So they take a percentage of that. They are very futuristic and all that. Now, the second type of investment is a debt securities with warrants investment. Now, what this is that the investor does not get paid based on the portion of your profits, but he gets paid based on the overall revenue. We as startups have to be very, very careful of that, because what that means, and they will not even discuss percentage with you. What that means is that while in the normal traditional equity, the investor gets paid only when there's a profit. In the second one, debt securities warranties, what happens is that the investor gets paid whether or not the business is profitable. Now, how do you avoid this kind of pitfall? What you should do is critically look at the terms and conditions of the agreement. You have to make sure that the amount that you're being given is relative to the amount that the amount and terms you're to pay back, and it's worthwhile to you. So everything is about you. If you see, okay, I can live with it, and you know, I'll live with, I'm going to live with the fact that he's going to be collecting not on my profit, but on my revenue. I can live with it, say, because he invested 20 million, and all I need as startup, as you know, as my seed capital for my business is 10 million. So you're telling yourself, okay, it's worthwhile that he's going to get he's going to get a return on his investment based on your revenue. The second thing to watch out for is preferred versus common shares. Now, what this means basically, as name implies, is when it's common, that means it's just as it is, you and the investor on equal footing. So he gets 1 vote for 1 share of the business. And this is very, very critical because of decision making, because when you're talking of the kind of decisions that can affect your business or the kind of decision that can affect your startup, voting is a critical element. Without voting decides voting decides how the company goes or not, and who is the person that is going to be basically in charge of the company. However, if it's preferred shares, then the investor is exercising a disproportionate level of control and is taking larger share of the revenue. Now, when you're talking of preferred shares, you're working on a completely different set of rules. And normally there's always an agreement that defines a set of rules that occur or that will take place when preferred shares is what's being used. It may or may not be in the investment agreement, but because people try to make the investment agreement short so it's easy to read, so it may not be in it and all that. So let me give you an example. So when you're talking of common shares, you're looking at 1 share, 1 vote. So if, let's say I'm the owner of the company and I have 60% shares of that company, what it means is that when it's time to vote, I have 60. Do you understand? So 1 share, 1 vote. However, so you say, but if it's a preferred shares, what that means is that, for example, they can say in their agreements that they get 10 votes per share, while you're working under your common shares and you're getting 1 vote per share. So when they get 1 million in profit, you're going to be getting 100,000 in profits. That's what that means. And also, what preferred shares does is that it gives them additional rights, such as the anti-dilution protection and liquidation preference. And those are the next things we're going to be discussing in our investment agreement, what to watch out for. The next thing to watch out for is what we just talked about, the anti-dilution protection. Now, what this means is that, for example, the investor invests 100K at 1 million valuation and gets 10%. So, this is the example that I've used, so it keeps on recurring. Then you want to sell as a company, you want to, sell more shares, and you want to sell it at a discounted rate, maybe because you're selling it to your family, maybe because you're selling it to your friends, or maybe because you want to attract a huge investor. So you tell the investor, don't worry, you can get it at a lower, you discount it basically for them. Now, what this means is that it is a risk for the investor because he will have a decrease in the overall ownership percentage. Then when this happens, of course, the investor will be like, no, I'm getting lesser for the money I've done. But once there's an anti-dilution protection in the agreement, once that clause is there, what it helps do is that the original investor is not going to be at a disadvantage. Because what will happen is that the investor will buy any additional share whenever there's a threat of having their full ownership percentage diluted. Now, there are different versions of anti-dilution protection, but the one that most investors go for is the full ratchet. And what it means is that no matter what, they're going to buy, first off, they're going to buy shares at the lowest price that those shares were offered. So if say you're offering to your family and friends at a very discounted price, they would have the opportunity to buy additional shares at that discounted price. So it doesn't affect their overall ownership percentage of shares in the company. But what we always try to do as lawyers is to, have a middle ground where you go for the partial ratchet. So what happens in that situation is that the investor will buy additional shares according to a weighted formula. So it's basically going to be according to actual market prices, but everything is all about negotiations. So he will not necessarily buy at the prices that you're giving, at the discount prices that you're giving to new share investors, but it will be closer to the market price. So if your shares, maybe he bought it at 2005 at 1 naira per share, and now the company has been valuated maybe 5 times more than the 1 million, so it's now 5 million. Then you want to sell more shares, and you're selling the shares at, say, because now your company has, increased in valuation, so you're selling the shares at, say, 3 naira. So what will happen is that he will not buy it at that 3 naira, but he will also not buy it at the 5 naira, which is now the actual market value, but he may buy it somewhere about 3.5 or 4 naira. So, there's a middle ground that everyone is meeting on. Next thing to watch out for is the liquidation preference. Now, what that means is that it describes how various owners will get paid when there is a cause for liquidation, either bankruptcy or you're selling the company early. Now, an example is if there's no investor, and maybe you own 30% of the company, that means when you're declaring bankruptcy, or when you're someone else wants to buy the company, and you want to make a huge profit, you make 30% of whatever it is after all the bills have been paid. However, if you have investors and they put up a liquidation preference, and in the liquidation preference clause, there's like a double dip or a triple dip. What that means is that they will get paid 3 times more before you get paid. So if the original investment is 1 million, 100,000 as we've said. Remember, every investor wants to have a return of investment. So what they can put in the liquidation preference that I'll be paid maybe at the end of it, or my return on investment will be 500,000, and then it's over a period of time. However, because someone came in with huge money that is bugaing, and you feel like, oh, okay, I want to make returns. What that clause would do, if it's a double dip, is that he'll be paid 3 times his investment. So he can be paid 100,000, 100,000. Then, or his investment, or the return on investment means that you'll be getting 1 million, 1 million, 1 million. So you'll get 1 million, you do a double dip, another 1 million, you do a triple dip, 1 million, before you yourself get any million. And what that means, why that is dangerous is because, let's say at the end of the day, someone buys that business for just 5 million. And then, you have to pay off a lot of things. You have to settle some bills. And then after settling those bills, he takes 3 million. Do you think you have made any profit from it? You've not made any profit from that business. So one reason why investors put that clause in is so that it will discourage the investor from selling the business too early, because they know that most times when people see money, they just feel, oh, let's go there, and you take the money and go. But by the time you see that you have to pay investors so much money, you calm down, you make sure that the business is at a very profitable place, not just for the investor, but for you before you sell. The last covenant, the last thing we need to look out for, another pitfall that many startups don't look out for, is covenant. Now, this is basically promises either to do or not to do. So you can say, you can have affirmative covenants, which is to do. You can have, negative covenants, which is not to do. The promises you make as a startup is very critical, especially when it's written down. So in your covenants, it can include something as lofty as distributing maybe financial statements monthly or quarterly. Now, while this is not bad in itself, the issue, and it's not wrong, because of course, your investors need to know what's happening in your company. The issue about it is that it may affect your day-to-day running of your business. And once you don't do it, any investor can, hold on that clause and say, oh, you did not submit the monthly statements for the financial statements for today. Okay, we are drawing out, we are calling up on our investments. You're going to, we are going to liquidate, you're going to give us all that. And so another thing is, make sure you don't sign anything you can't follow through. See, it may be right, it may be the right thing to do, but if you cannot follow through, please do not sign it. An example of a covenant that is very, very affirmative, but can put a startup in trouble is when you have a clause where you say that you're not going to violate any law or regulations. It's an affirmative clause. Of course, you should not violate any law or regulation. But see the problem. As a lawyer, I will not write that kind of agreement for you. What I would do is say, just put just something very tiny there that alters everything. So the word knowingly. So it's the same thing. I will not violate any regulations or law. I will not knowingly violate any regulations or law. Now, why is this very, 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 very critical? It means that it is only what you know you can be held accountable for. And the truth is that there are so many laws and regulations that define a startup, any business generally. You can be operating, okay, so let's say you're operating an e-commerce startup, money. In your mind, the first thing you want to look, the first laws you look at, apart from your constitution, is basically maybe the CBN law, CBN Act, But there are other laws. You have the Security and Exchange Commission Act, you have the EFCC Act, you have the Frauds Act. Now these laws, because okay, you just feel maybe it's not talking about money now, so why should I look at it? But they are very important. You have the Data Protection Act. So these laws that you feel that they may not necessarily affect you because it's not, it doesn't directly talk on finance. That's not true. It would affect you. So the very good thing to do is to look at this covenants, because this is where investors latch on, and this is where the lawyers for investors are, cashing out, because they know that if they're able to get the startup to sign up on things like this, they know that definitely the startups are going to fall through, and the investor gets more money. And of course, if my client gets more money, if I'm the lawyer to the client, automatically I get more money. So always make sure that you read the fine lines of your contract agreements, especially the things that you're promising to do and not to do. Then also make sure that you do not sign things that would hinder you from taking opportunities. For example, you say every decision, maybe I want to hire somebody, I'll say every hiring decision must first get the approval of the investor. That as much as like is hampering and hindering your day-to-day business, and it will make you lose a lot of opportunities. So make sure that your covenants are, as clear as possible. The next slide, please. Okay, so this is when we say play it safe, or when I'm saying play it safe, at all time, we always have bulky investment agreements. You see investment agreements running to, 10, 15, 20 pages, and, definitely things will be lost within the fine print. There are a lot of things that people may not read. And so there is a startup accelerator that's, that kind of started in 2005, Y Combinator. And recently they brought up a type of agreement, and the agreement is called SAFE. So it basically means simple agreement for future equity. Now, what this SAFE it does is that it's an agreement between the startup and the investor that gives the investor the right to receive equity in futuristically. So you receive equity not just as you're signing up to give money to the startup. It's in the future. And why this agreement is very, 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 very good, as the name says, safe, and as it says, simple agreement, is that two things are just what the agreement looks out for: the money that is going to be given to the company and the valuation of the company. So once those two things are taken care of, the agreement is set to go. So if you go on the Y Combinator website, I think you can download a template of the SAFE agreement. It's very easy. It's just 5 pages. The 5 pages covers the investor, covers the company, covers everything and governs everything that can happen in an investment agreement. It's very, very easy. It talks about the events, it talks about liquidation, it talks about the parties, it talks about the money, it talks about the return of investment, it talks about the termination, very, very important. So when you talk about termination, when is it going to terminate? How is it going to terminate? What triggers termination clause in any agreement, basically? And that's it. So I think it's one of the, I know it's one of the easiest agreements to use as a startup, especially when you're a startup and you're a small business. It's very understandable for a layman, although of course you can't do anything without your lawyer in 2023, but at least you can understand what's being said and all that. So these are the things to basically look out for. These are the pitfalls to avoid. These are the legal issues that you need to cast your eye on to make sure that you do not enter anything that is going to hamper you. So next slide, please. Yes, my conclusion is taking on an investor isn't a walk in the park. There are dozens of important legal clauses to understand and negotiate before making a deal. Now, one thing we should understand is everybody's in it for their profits. So not all the clauses in your investment agreements will favor you. However, what you should always look out for, and as I keep saying, is make sure you understand the clauses and understand how it affects you or the implications it will have or the risk that you're exposing yourself to. Once you understand this, once you know, okay, this is what it's in it for me, and you can also take precautions to help yourself. So you should also understand what kind of risk you're willing to take and what kind of risk you're not willing to take. You should also understand implications for anything you sign on or sign up for in your investment agreement. So thank you for listening. I hope I kept within my 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Adamma. I think that was a beautiful one. That's a very, very beautiful one. Really appreciate. Hi, guys. For those of you that have questions, quickly drop them in the Q&A section while I bring up Nekesa to run through the components that we need to watch out for. Nekesa is one of the pioneers of innovation in Kenya. Like, there's no way you talk about Kenya's innovation ecosystem and you wouldn't have to mention Nekesa maybe like 4, 5, if not 10 times. All right. She is the former CEO of HiHub. She was also the director of strategy at AfriLabs, and she's currently the director of community at Medic. Nekesa, thanks for joining us. We greatly appreciate your presence. You have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me today. And also, I guess, thank you for aging me, because you call me a pioneer of the innovation ecosystem, which makes me sound like I've been around for quite a while. And it feels great to be referred to in that regard. But the truth is that, as we like to say, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And so I have been in the tech and innovation space, primarily in Kenya, I'll say, for about maybe just under 15 years now. So I have, I've seen a lot and done a lot, but definitely have learned a lot from the people that have come before me, and I'm quite grateful. And also grateful to AfriLabs that expanded my reach out of Kenya and into the rest of the continent in the time that I had working with them. As has been mentioned, I am now Director of Community at Medic. Please, who is the speaker again? My name is Nekesa Were, and I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. And I was just saying, I'm now Director of Community at Medic, and at Medic we build digital health solutions for community health. And we also support local entrepreneurs to take on the work that we are currently doing. So Medic is registered in San Francisco. Our team is spread across several cities across the world. We're a team of about 100, but majority of our work is in Africa and Asia. So a huge component of what I'm doing is ensuring that we have teams in Africa and Asia that are able to support the work that we do, and eventually phasing out the kind of support that they need from organizations like ours, Medic. So I'm struggling with what to add after Adamma's made such a brilliant presentation on the investment landscape and what startups should be looking out for. And I thought I'd just spend a little time, so I give us back some time for Q&A, maybe just augmenting some of the stuff that she has said already. And the first thing that struck me was ensuring, when Adamma said, ensure that you've dotted all your I's and T's around as regulation and the legal obligations that you have. And I've found this to be a really common pitfall with startups, which comes back to bite them when they're getting investment. It makes our process a lot harder. I mean, you're lucky if it only comes back when you're trying to get in, comes back to bite when you're trying to get investment. Worst case is that you then get caught up in legal processes because the regulator has found out that there's certain I's that you haven't dotted or T's that you haven't crossed. And so when you think about any tax obligations that you might have, if you're the kind of startup that's dealing a lot with people's data, are there any data violations, any data protection violations currently? The terms of service and the privacy policies, have you been paying due attention to that and making them very public, on your app, on your site for your customers to see? Or are you one of those very naughty startups that hides them somewhere and makes people click that I have read when they can't even find where to, to read your terms of service? There's lots of resources that can help you with that. I know that Mozilla Africa runs some sessions around how to collect data, how to protect it, how to ensure your terms of service are visible, and also that people understand them, right? It's one thing to have a whole bunch of text on your app or on your website, but it's another thing, can people actually understand the legalese, that you've written? So I'm sure there's lots of resources, but one of them, I think, is Mozilla.Africa. I'll see if I can find that link before we finish. So taking a step back, for me, that's a very common pitfall where startups don't pay due attention to the kinds of regulations, policies that they should have had in place already, so that when it comes to having these conversations with investors, then it takes so much longer. And that's if you're lucky, if they're patient enough to tell you, okay, sort this out, and then we will come back. Sometimes they're not, and so you lose out on potential funding. Another one is documentation, and the previous speaker spoke about this a little bit as well. I'm a firm believer in whatever you can document. And so even if you're a startup of 2 people, if it's a founder's agreement, document that. If you have one employer, have a contract for that employer. If you've got a vendor, even if it's just someone that brings in teas and coffees and mandazis, I don't know what you call mandazis in Nigeria, have some form of agreement for that. Just get into the habit of documenting things. This makes it a lot easier for you when you're now beginning to engage investors who want to understand the A to Z of your business. They probably will be looking for what kind of documentations do you have? Who are you in agreement with? If it is a founder's agreement, what kind of agreement do you have around what are individual founders bringing into the startup and so on. What else can I mention around the fine print for these agreements? And again, Adamma did such a brilliant job on this. Where I've found that startups sometimes fall short is on, again, just looking at the details of what it is that you're signing. And I saw a really interesting question there, which I hope we get to answer. What if after signing you discover that you are misinformed or you didn't understand something right? Can you then go back? I found that sometimes startups don't pay attention to the most basic things. And so, for example, the agreement that you're signing, what is the currency in which you are agreeing? Are you sure it was dollars and not euros? Hopefully it's not Kenya shillings, because we're doing really badly against the dollar. But more importantly, what are the milestones that you're agreeing to? Because sometimes your investment or follow-on investment is going to be unlocked by certain milestones that you have agreed on with your funders. So is the milestone, for example, when you're ready to scale outside of Nigeria and you show us these markers, then we unlock some follow-on funding for you, or is your milestone once you get this kind of certification from the regulator, then we will unlock that kind of funding. Sometimes funders or other startups fail to understand what that milestone-based funding is. And so they begin to get frustrated that the funder is not releasing money when they haven't done their part to ensure the money is released. Another one to really pay attention to is the investors' rights. So what are the investors' voting rights? What is their right to information? What have you told them that you will get? Which I think is where Adamma was coming from when she says it's great to be open and to promise things, but only promise things that you're able to give. So what right to information have you given your investor? How much, how open, or rather, what space are you giving them to be part of major decisions? So what is the participation in major decisions that they are that you're agreeing to? And also terms and conditions. Again, under what terms are you agreeing that you're going to terminate? So if the startup does this or the investor does that. These all seem really, really simple. But at least in the Kenya innovation ecosystem, I've seen that some of the high-profile disagreements between investors and startups have come out of just not reading the fine print, or not understanding what it is you are signing. And I think this was probably about 7 years ago. We had a data startup get a really good investment from a foreign investor. And about 2 years in, I think, the investor came and basically took over, fired, I think it was the CEO or the CFO, whoever it was, and rejigged things within the startup and said, okay, this isn't how we're running things from now on. And as an ecosystem, we went up in arms. We said, here's another case of a foreign investor coming in and snatching a startup from, an African innovator. But as we dug into and I mean, it was crazy because it was being reported on all your tech blogs, were going up in arms. It became a racial conversation. It just got really ugly. But then when we calmed down and we go back to the details of this agreement that has been signed, it turned out that this startup just didn't meet its obligations. They had promised things that they would do, and quarter after quarter after quarter just always fell short. Yeah. And so what terms and conditions are you agreeing to when you get into an agreement with an investor? And then that takes to my next point, which is that VCs want their money back. They aren't giving you money because they're nice people. They're giving you money because they expect a return on investment. And so as far as across the funding landscape now, we see a more humane kind of funders who, I think a terminology or other phrase that's used a lot now is we invest in founders, and their companies. And so really paying a lot more attention to the individual, to the person running the startup, kind of like a wholesome approach to funding and supporting. And so making sure you have things like, what kind of support do you need outside of making sure that the startup runs? Are you getting the kind of mentorship that you need? Are you getting the kind of wellness support that you need? You need, you're increasingly seeing funders going in that direction of supporting startups or founders. But the reality is that at the end of the day, they are doing this because you're an investment. Your startup is an investment and they want to get the investment back. Yeah. And so sometimes VCs will be celebrities, and we kind of get the impression that, okay, they have this disposable income that they're able to burn. And so this is going to be easy. I'm going to promise to do a bunch of things. And then, it's all up from here. And sometimes they are celebrities with money, but then most times they are entrepreneurs just like us. And so there are people that have run companies like us, that have failed like us, and have succeeded like us. And the benefit that they have that we may not is that they have seen it and done it. And so if you're going to them with, flouty promises of things that you will do, or lies about things that projections for your company and scale for your company, many times they're able to sniff out that bullshit, and so they're coming to you intent on getting return on their investment. They may be coming to you because they like you, but at the end of the day, you need to understand that you're transacting with a very shrewd business person. Someone who you probably will not be able to lie to, someone who you need to be really clear when you're going into a conversation with them. You need to be really clear what you're going into the conversation with and what you want to ask for. I think the benefit of VC funding is that, one, they come with the money that you need to scale your company, but two, they also come with a think tank. So again, they are entrepreneurs, just like you usually. And so probably any question you have to ask, they can answer this question for you. And I find that a really interesting dynamic that a lot of startups don't take advantage of. I don't know if it's fear. I don't know if it's not understanding exactly what kind of world the VC opens up for you. But I would encourage that you take full advantage of having VCs or really any kind of investor in your corner. Another thing that's really important to note is that just because a VC funds you doesn't mean that you're immediately going to be successful. We hear about startups raising lots and lots of funding, and then it just seems as though they just grew and grew and grew. But that's not always the case. Yes, they will open up doors. You probably will become a part of an elite cohort of startups, and it's something that you're going to put in your LinkedIn profile that I was in this cohort of, funded by this and that person. But eventually, what this VC funding means for you is that there's going to be so many more eyeballs on you, and not just people looking, your fellow startups, but then also the regulators are going to be looking at you, the policymakers are going to be looking at you. Sandboxes are probably going to be encouraging you to join the sandbox so you can support your regulation for your country. And so it's really easy to romanticize the getting of funding, but what I would urge you to do is, even as you're signing those agreements, just be really clear and understand what it is that you're signing on for. The moment you sign, you lose a little bit of your, I was going to say soul, but that's not true. You lose a little bit of your startup, just a little bit. And the more you sign and the more you raise, chances are you lose just a little bit of control. So again, that's another thing that you probably want to pay attention to. And then finally, VCs may not always believe in your vision, or even if they believe in your vision, they not necessarily believe in how you get there. And so again, coming to a funding table with a VC, you really need to be well aligned. And this again comes back into the agreement and those fine details of what it is you're agreeing to. What is the equity split, or what kind of equity are you giving them? Conversations on them getting to know you and what your vision is. But the reality is that, again, at the end of the day, they're looking for return on investment. And so when you have a VC come in, you're probably going to find that they have the leeway, because of your agreement, to tell you that they like your company, but then not how you're going about running it. And so these are the changes that they would like to make. And based off of the agreement that you have signed with them, it is quite likely that they would be within their rights to make those changes. So again, going back to the story that I was telling you about the startup, the Kenyan startup. So eventually the VC made those changes. The VC decided who he was going to hire to replace the CEO, who he was going to fire, decided which board members were going to stay on and which ones needed to leave, to just rejig the company. And it looked harsh, and people were hurt, people lost their jobs, the Kenyan ecosystem was shaken. But the reality is that that was the agreement that the startup had signed, And so I guess before we go into questions, I know some of this looks very daunting, and you're like, okay, but now I'm a startup. Where do I even begin getting information to help me as I figure all this out? And yes, at the end of the day, you are going to need a lawyer. I would say, as you get that lawyer, also look at other options in the space that complement the work of a lawyer. I know that in my time at the iHub, we got into agreements with law firms that were able to subsidize or completely zero rate the kind of support that they would give to startups. And for them, this was a long game. And so they understood that by supporting a startup when it was starting up, then they actually had a whole package available for that. And you could find that your hubs have similar agreements, or if they don't, then I would urge you to encourage them to get similar agreements, because these kinds of conversations are really useful for you. And if you can get your hub to be the bridge that gets you to that kind of information, then that would be great. You could also check out raise.africa, that helps you to understand and manage equity. So it's basically a plug and play. You go onto the website, set up an account, give in the details that you need to give in, and it basically shows you, kind of supports you in how to raise and what kind of equity that you should likely be giving. But ultimately, like Adamma said, at the end of the day, you will need your lawyer. And so really do figure out ways to make those relationships work, and don't compromise on it. Get it as early on in your process as possible, and let the lawyer really run with you and walk with you on your journey. Yeah, and that's it. I'm happy to hand it back over to the hosts and guide us on how we can take some questions.
Thanks so much, Nekesa. That was a very insightful and practical one. I greatly appreciate that. I know you talked about voting rights, that we need to be careful and ensure that the voting rights is in our favor, and also the currency of the agreement. I was like, oh, that's true. I never thought of that. So that was something I took note. And then the terms and conditions of the agreement, to be sure that it's in your favor. So there are some questions here. Since you're still on, I will just let you take the one that I feel you should take a nab on. So Gift asks that, is it possible for an investor to exit the investment along the way? And if it is possible, how can you cope with such uncertainty, considering the fact that you depended much on the investor and you are not expecting the situation to be like that? So so the question is it possible for an investor to exit the investment along the way? And yeah, how do you how do you adjust for that reality?
It is possible. And I hope Adamma will contribute to this conversation as well, but it is possible. And I've seen investors step out. And some of the reasons that I've seen, one obviously is in the terms and conditions, and it would be that the startup has not met an obligation that it should have met. And so the investor says, this is what we agreed on, and you have contravened the agreement, so therefore we are pulling out. There actually was another one in Kenya a few months ago where it wasn't even about startup delivery. It was a poor decision on the part of the founders. They were at a club and they assaulted, and the founder assaulted a woman, and the media caught on it. And the investors said, you know what, we can't be associated with this kind of person, and they pulled out. I know in the height of COVID, some investors pulled out as well and just cited economic conditions. And so you'll find that usually the terms of engagement will give space for that kind of thing to happen. Now, how do you cushion yourself? It's just really fine-tuning your financial processes. I know this is really hard for startups to do, but good practice for organizations is just to always have that nest egg. And so for any money that you have coming in, you know how you're portioning it. And part of what you're portioned to is that fund that's available for emergencies. That's one way to do it. A fund that, one of the things we tried to do at the iHub was to have 1 year's runway, so that if absolutely no money came in from this date, we could still run for 1 year based off of the nest egg that we had. We weren't always able to do it, but that was the ambition. And I think that's the ambition that startups should have. Worst case is you can't do that, and you now have to make really difficult decisions around redundancies, around perhaps putting certain product development processes on hold because you can't afford them anymore. But there's different things that you can do to support yourself and keep yourself going even in that adversity. Thanks.
Oh, all right. Thanks for that. So I will direct this question to Ada. Noleg is asked, if I tie myself without proper understanding, then I realize after I sign, is there a way to reverse it? So if I go into an agreement without adequate knowledge, can I reverse it at a later time? So Ada, I want you to first give a stab on that.
Okay, so on the lighter note, there was a time Nekesa said liar or lawyer. I wanted to be sure, Nekesa, it was just your accent, not you, putting a jab on us.
It was my accent, but I knew as soon as it came out of my mouth that is
that
what
I was going to hold on. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So as regards to question, you've signed. I'm going to be blunt as usual. Once you append your signature to a document, it means that you've agreed on whatever it is that is in that document. So basically, it's a legal document that can hold sway anywhere in the world. However, when there's a clear case of misunderstanding, especially when it feels or it's on the face of it, it shows that there was like maybe a false representation of whatever it is, maybe of the investor, of his capabilities, and then you can, first of all, I always like not the easy way, but the the non-fighting way, which is, let's go back to the drawing table. Oh, you did this, you said this, and it's not so, or probably I didn't understand. Is there any opportunity for us to, revise? Most often than not, it doesn't work, especially when it's to the favor of the investor, because ignorance is not an excuse, but when it's really obvious that this was not in any way to be understood by by common man and all that, then you can exercise the option of going to court. It's a contractual agreement, so obviously it's a civil case and all that. So you can actually go to court and make your case that the way it was said, the way it was couched, is not in any way how a layman, it can be easily understood, and is a reasonable request and all that. So it may not always be that you have that option, but that option is there. You understand? So you may not be able to reverse it in every case, but you have an option of going to the court and trying out the courts to see if they can assist in helping you reverse it. So that's the answer to that question.
Oh, okay. So what I got was there are some instances where, yes, you can reverse it, but you have to go through the courts, especially if the way it was written.
Yes, go to court, but you can also have a sit down with your investors and try to see. Yes, so there's always that option of
having a conversation with the investor and making them know what you're standing for. All right, so that's great. The next question, before I allow Nekesa also to add our own feedback, is the person said, what's the difference between term sheets, investment agreements, or investment contracts? What's the difference between these terminologies? Term sheets, investment agreements, and investment contracts. Oh, okay, so I lost Ada. Nekesa, would you give it a go first while Ada tries to join back?
Well, yeah, I could give it a shot. It's really not my area of expertise, but what I've seen is that I think the main difference really is that the investment agreement is a binding obligation, while the term sheet isn't. And I think that's really the easiest way to put it. And that is the biggest difference between the two. The term sheet would not generally be considered binding. In fact, I think specifically say non-binding, and that the parties are not legally obligated to follow.
Okay.
Welcome back.
It only provides a framework, whereas with the other one, it is legally binding and subject to penalty if you do not follow. But I'll let Adamma answer that.
Yeah, okay, I had the question. Difference between term sheet and investment agreement, right?
Yes.
And so I think Nekesa, she answered it appropriately. Basically, one is non-binding, the other is non. So what term sheet does is that before you sign an agreement, they say, okay, so now that's another thing. Once there's one term sheet has been used, you cannot now come out and say you do not understand something, because what term sheet does is it provides an avenue to list everything possible that will be in an agreement without signing. So anything you do not understand in the term sheet, that's the time to say, okay, well, I don't understand this. But if there's a term sheet, what the investor is doing is, setting, not necessarily setting a trap, but giving you a way. Say, see, this is everything that is going to be done in this agreement. This is what it's going to be like. So it's basically the agreement, but it's non-binding because it's not going to be signed. It just gives you a clear definition of everything that is going to probably be in the agreement at the time of signature. So it shows you the basic terms and conditions of your agreement just before you sign it. So that's the difference. One is binding, one is non-binding.
Okay, thanks greatly for that explanation. There's just one last question before we call it.
Sorry, just real quick on that. I think the other really interesting thing about the term sheet is that it also includes the timelines for due diligence and finalizing the deal. So once you have the term sheet, you know exactly what your investor would be looking for as they do due diligence on you and what that timeline is to finalizing the deal. So it also gives you a bit of a clearer picture of what a realistic expectation to getting the money in your bank would be.
Okay, thanks for that addition, Nekesa. Greatly appreciate. So this question is from Lamide, and it says, what are the processes for removing an investor from the board of directors? And what are the incentives for being a board member? And the third part of the question says, is it necessary for an investor to be part of the board? All right. So okay, we lost Ada. So I think, Nekesa, you can give it a start, and then once Ada comes, she chimes in on it.
Right. The process for removing an investor from the board of directors, again, you'd need to be going back to the terms and conditions to see what it is that you agreed to in the first place. I guess would need to be really clear in terms of a deliverable from the investor that they didn't meet. So was it, for example, milestone-based investment and they didn't come through on the follow-on investment that they owed you at the time and they should have, released that funding? There might be different reasons, but ultimately your contract should set a process for how the investor is removed. I would imagine it's clearly articulating, what terms and conditions were contravened, citing what you both agreed would happen with regards to that and what the exit would be for the investor. I know that sometimes investors might want to get back what they put in. This now would really depend on the shrewdness of your lawyer and whether that is something that you agreed to, or if it was just walk away. I've seen other situations where it's just, okay, if you're leaving, walk away, leave us as we were. So again, I mean, I know a really broad answer, but it ultimately just depends on what agreement it is that you signed. What are the incentives of being a board member? It depends. For some organizations, the incentive is one, that you get access or you get to be involved in an organization whose mission you agree to. So are you a mission-driven investor? You might be looking for a mission-driven startup to be involved in, and so that would be a benefit for you. I know that there's some organizations that pay their board members, so that might be another. Sorry, I'm just looking for the question because it kind of left. Some startups, some organizations pay their board members, so that might be another reason that you might want to be a board member. Sometimes it's that you're looking to give back. I join boards because I want to give back. And so it's an opportunity for me, one, to be part of a mission-driven organization, and two, to give some of my time back to the community or to the startup community. or to be part of actually a product or a process that I believe in. So also I'll only join boards where I like the product and it's one that I'm willing to put my name behind, not because I am an influencer, I'm not, but I want to confidently walk to boardrooms and investors and speak about this company because I believe in it. Yeah, I hope I tackled that question. I still don't see it.
Oh, okay, so, okay, yeah, you said, I think you addressed it perfectly. You talked about how to remove the investor and what the incentives for the board members are. And I think the third part of it was, is it necessary for an investor to be part of the board? And I think you also touched on that greatly. There's this question.
Not necessary, but usually they will insist on it. They, depending on how much they're putting into your company, they definitely would want to have some kind of say in the direction of the company, and that would usually come by sitting on the board. So more often than not, you'll find that investors sit on the board as well.
Oh, awesome. All right, thanks for that. This final question is from Samuel, and it says, so he's saying that many startups should be impact driven, but I think most investments ecosystem in Africa fund based on expertise, or I'm not sure that's its appetite is the word he wants to use.
I think it's appetite he wants to use.
Okay, so because appetite actually means something, okay, appetite, okay, funds based on their appetite. Yes. Many startups should be impact driven for the continent, which limits where to get money for early stage. How do we gain the investor that align to impact from your experience in Africa, and how to manage legality in this case? So how do we get investors that aligns with impact in Africa?
Oh, Samuel, you get them by pitching and pitching and pitching and understanding that you're probably going to pitch to 100 investors before you find the one. I mean, that's the reality of it. It really is a matchmaking exercise. And the thing to realize when you're going into this season of looking for investment is that it's not just about who has the money that you want. It's about who do you want to be a part of your business again. So it goes two ways. You may find someone that has the right amount of money able to give into your kind of startup, but you as a startup as well needs to do your due diligence to see if historically and based off of this investor's portfolio, if that really is the portfolio that you want to be a part of. You need to investigate the individual investors, looked at their LinkedIn profiles, Google them, just be sure that that's who you want to get into bed with. So you two are looking, as much as you're pitching, you're also looking for the kind of investor that matches your business as well. And the truth is that you're probably going to search for that for a very, very long time to find the investor that works for you. Around investing in the African ecosystem, when it's just appetite and not necessarily impact, I mean, I get that, but my experience has also been, and for sure, investors many times when they come into the continent are just looking for what is the startup of the day that looks set to scale and make me money in X amount of time. But then again, remember earlier in this discussion, I was speaking about there seems to be a almost new breed of investor being created. And these are those investors who actually care about the details of where they're putting their money in. And I really love the conversations that I've been a part of recently where foreign investors are saying, you know what, we've heard that there is a market in Africa and we want to put our money in Africa, but we don't understand it. And we don't want to come in blindly. And for me, that's a space of vulnerability that investors didn't used to have, where they can say, I want to give you your money, but to be honest, I don't understand you. I don't understand your market. I don't understand what will scale across the continent. So I need for someone to fill me in. And then if I believe it, then I can support you. And so if you look at some of the courses, so for example, I think like what ABAN, maybe not ABAN, I don't know if ABAN is doing this, but I think the Nairobi Business Angels are doing this, where I think they have a session where they sensitize investors on what to expect from the continent in terms of the market, in terms of access to finance for startups, in terms of basically your demographic of founders, that kind of stuff, things that may be peculiar to Africa, just things that are interesting about the African continent and the innovation ecosystem that investors should be aware of. And then the way that we build in Africa, I think, is fantastic, because there's the financial question that we answer, and there's an impact question that we answer. And for us, we're able to marry the two, because the kind of innovations that we are building are based off of need, are based off of our creativity, and so many, and a way that need and creativity, when we meet it, leads to impact. And so it's almost impossible for, I think, to divorce the two. And I think as foreign investors begin to understand this, that a lot of what we are building eventually leads to impact while leading also into financial success, then I think they might be more inclined to invest in impact, understanding that it's just a part of a whole.
I'm going to say very, very, very big thank you to Nekesa. You've done amazing well. You and Ada have given us a whole lot to think about. I think one of my greatest takeaways from this meet is simply the fact that you truthfully, when it comes to legal issues, you don't want to just be careless about it at all. You really, really want to find someone as a lawyer who can go through these agreements with you. I think for a lot of startups, maybe because of cost implications, we tend to want to play things, do things by the air and think we can just walk our way through. But for investments or for legal agreements, I think it's safe to just go with what is right. Look for someone who's vested in this. And like Nekesa has mentioned, I mean, you can find a way to trade it forward. If you are in a particular ecosystem, are there lawyers who deal with this particularly? Are they the kind of people that you could work with to see if they can look through your processes as well? Even if it's a friend or a family member, it's very important that you allow this to play out. Get someone to look at your agreements. And so I'm going to say a great thank you to everyone who's been part of this. If you have questions and they were not addressed, maybe you could still send them in. We're trying to see if we can work out a scenario where we would pair those who have attended this webinar and the entire webinars for this series with mentors as well to help them in their various startups one way or the other, depending on which strengths that mentor has. So that's something that we're looking forward to. I think our next event would be in 2 days, that'd be on Wednesday, and would have Gideon Brefor coming in to tell us about design thinking. When you're working on products, when you're trying to get an MVP, when you're trying to build a product, what exactly are you looking at? How are you fine-tuning this product? What is the thinking or the rationale behind your product so that this can help you, especially where investments and funding is concerned? Are you able to put together a product that investors can look at and say, okay, this is great, we'd like to put our money here and all that. So it'd be a great time as usual. Nekesa and Ada have been amazing. I don't know if there are any other last words. If you haven't put your name down or what it is you want to do. Okay, someone left a comment and said, please spare us, or one needs to learn how to pitch impact-driven tech startups. Oh, well, like Nekesa mentioned, lots of pitches, but it's getting better now. It's getting much better. And if you prepare yourself properly, Albert mentioned to us, I think when he was talking about what investors were looking out for, the mindset of investors as well. So if you figure out, if you do your homework about the likely investors who are coming in, you might just find what it is they want, what it is they are looking for, and you can tailor your pitch as well to suit that. And there's every likelihood that they might be much more interested in you. I don't know, Adamma, do you have any last words? And Nekesa as well. A minute, and then I guess we'll be out of here.
Well, for me, just very grateful to have been part of this conversation. I do challenge the startups here to challenge their hubs, to support them in fine-tuning the impact-driven pitch decks, and in finding funding and in finding legal support. The nature of hubs across Africa, I'm finding, is changing, and the needs of startups are changing, and so the hubs need to morph to meet those needs for startups. So I would challenge the startups to challenge the hubs, but also I would challenge the startups to be a part of a lot more of these conversations. These conversations really help. Don't get stuck in your garage or in your hub trying to build something in stealth mode. Talk to more people, understand the challenges people have had and how they've overcome them, and learn from them as well. And don't be shy to reach out to people that you feel could support you in your journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nekesa. Amazing. Ada, yes.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this. We do not take it for granted.
I think we have another participant with Ada as well, who really wants to make herself part of this meeting. And I can't just tell why Ada keeps muting the microphone when she wants to put in a word or two, or maybe it's a he.
Sorry. Sorry. First off, I think my network has been very, up and down. So my word or two last was thank you once again for the opportunity. I would say if the goal of a startup or of your startup is impact, then I'll highly recommend collaborations. As Nekesa said, don't do stealth mode, and always to yourself, trying to see if you can be the one that will make sure that the equator is aligned. Go for collaborations. Talk to other people, see what's there, see how you can upscale on what's there, and then never do anything without a lawyer. The truth is, if you don't engage a lawyer at the beginning, you will engage the lawyer at the end or at the middle. There must be an engagement with the lawyer. So you better start on time, because one thing I also realize is that lawyers would like to grow with you, but when you feel that you want to do it on your own because you think their money is too much, by the time you now end 10 billion and they'll charge you a percentage of that 10 billion, then you know what's happening. So always engage a lawyer, always seek for collaborations if you want, a global reach or impact. Yeah. And thank you for connecting me with Nekesa.
I'm so happy about the connections, and thank you for all you guys have done. I'm going to ask if it's not too much, if you want to also, because I can see some people already reaching out on LinkedIn and looking for people. So maybe we might just drop some details here as to where we can find where you can be found, if you have some handle that you'd like people to follow you on, and or how they can reach you as well to keep these conversations going as we go on. Like I said, we have people from like across Africa, really. So and they might want their own examples. They might want what is peculiar to, to their own place based on your own experiences. So please drop a handle where you can be reached out. Sheon, I'm just going to leave you to sign out this now. Are you
All
there?
right. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, Nekesa, for this great session. Thank you, Adamma. I think Adamma has also left. Greatly appreciate. Guys, I want to invite you personally to Wednesday's session. We're going to be talking about design thinking, and I think it's going to be an awesome time. I hope you all enjoyed today's session. See you same time Wednesday. All right. Bye, everyone.